friends! What happens to your body when you only eat once a day? You might burn fat, stabilize blood sugars, even trigger autophagy. But you also risk muscle loss, nutrient gaps, and a spike in stress hormones. And most people would stop there. But there's one study done in the 1940s that revealed something far deeper. It showed how restricting food doesn't just change your weight, it changes your mind. And what they found was so disturbing, it would be unethical to ever repeat. Now, before I tell you about that study, have you ever thought about whether or not eating one meal a day would increase or decrease your longevity? I typed this question into ChatGPT and this is their answer. It can activate autophagy, make you more insulin sensitive, and have lower blood sugars and lower your calories. That seems like it's all good. However, you can have nutrient deficiencies, muscle loss like sarcopenia, increase stress hormones like cortisol, and overload your digestive tract. That sounds not so good, and that's all true. Now, if you read further down, it states that there are only limited observational human studies. Now, if you typed into ChatGPT a similar question, what would happen if you ate only one meal a day? You would actually get a more complete answer. The same benefits: weight loss, improve insulin sensitivity, autophagy, which is basically stimulating your body to clean up old cells. However, here's the important difference. It still states that you can suffer from nutrient deficiencies, muscle loss, hormonal changes, but now it mentions more than just cortisol. Your thyroid and reproductive hormones can be affected. And people can have energy and mental health changes like fatigue, irritability, poor focus, and mood instability depending on how unbalanced and calorie restricted the diet is. And these are all very true and clearly demonstrated in that human clinical trial performed in the 1940s. And the second question comes with caution statements for a variety of people that the first question neglected to mention. So do I think AI will replace my job? I don't think so. AI algorithms only propagate and regurgitate popular concepts. People who program the AI probably have a very limited knowledge of science, medicine, and nutrition. And all these actually changes in real time. And a lot of what I know isn't so popular, often forgotten, and based on real life experiences that AI just doesn't get. And probably this lapse in data is from the limited data popular influencers talk about. Eating once a day has been promoted as a type of safe fasting. Is it? And by the way, how many people actually do this in real life? Well, I took an online YouTube poll, which received about 1,300 responses before I accidentally deleted it trying to take a picture of the results. So I put up a repeat poll, and I'll tell you about that a little later. I was really surprised with the results. I also realized that people are interchanging fasting terms, such as time-restricted eating and intermittent fasting. They are actually very different, and different physiological responses happen in your body. So eating once a day is a form of time-restrictive eating. It is not a form of intermittent fasting. Popular culture keeps confusing the two definitions, even the New York Times. Now, the true definition of intermittent fasting is not eating for over 24 hours. Any eating window within 24 hours is considered to be time-restricted eating, even though technically you are intermittently eating and intermittently not eating. But that doesn't mean your body is actually fasting. Because when you finish your last bite of any food, it doesn't mean that your body is fasting, because you still have to digest the food. And depending on your underlying biology and the food that you eat, it may take you several hours to digest that food. I have seen people vomit their breakfast at dinner time. That is pretty slow digestion. Fasting only happens if you have no more food in your digestive tract. So when you are fasting, you literally don't have anything left, and that's when your blood sugars and insulin will go down. especially if this is a type of food that you're eating. But your body doesn't go to zero. And that's because you mobilize your glycogen stores. And after you use up your glycogen stores, you will mobilize your fat stores. But unfortunately, you will also break down muscle tissue to meet your glucose needs as your muscle stores glycogen. And with that glycogen goes water. And that's why at the beginning of any weight loss, and especially if you rapidly lose weight, you will see your appendages shrink and your balance will significantly drop during the first several weeks of losing weight because you're simply losing a lot of water. Popular culture and social media focuses on the energy part of fasting. But in reality, your body, most of us, has more energy than we actually need. What we are lacking are essential nutrients that allows your body to process those calories. These include B vitamins such as thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and vitamin C, and thousands of other micronutrients called polyphenol and flavonols that your body can't make. You have to eat them. There are also minerals like magnesium and potassium that your body has to replenish. And without them, your heart would not beat well. Unfortunately, when you don't eat these essential micronutrients, you just simply won't get them. And by itself, that is a stress for your body. Many of these essential vitamins and minerals are found in fiber-rich whole plants. This is not a whole plant. And do you really think that you can meet your daily requirement of at least 30 grams of fiber and 30 essential micronutrients and your caloric needs all in one meal? Good luck. That one meal will likely take you more than an hour to chew. And if that's the case, are you really only eating once a day? But there are many different ways in which you can time restrict your eating to help you get the benefits of fasting to activate autophagy, reduce weight, improve your blood sugars, and insulin sensitivity. However, will that actually translate into longevity? And wait till the end until I tell you about that human trial in the 1940s. I'm sure that will help to better understand what happens to your body when you go on one meal a day. That will hopefully help you make a better decision on whether or not it's worth it. Now, the goal of time-restricted eating is to narrow to an eating window to 6 to 12 hours and a non-eating window to 12 to 18 hours. And the longer you don't eat, the more successful you will be at getting into a fasting state. Unlike counting your calories for calorie restriction, time-restricted eating focuses on when you eat, not how much or what you eat. So technically, if you ate a lot of cheese sandwiches or ate a lot of calories in junk food, over time, you will still gain weight and still become metabolically unhealthy. Hence, when you read articles or type any question into ChatGPT or any other AI algorithm, the information will be limited and biased for those not in the medical field. There's actually a version made for doctors, and I tried it a couple of times, and I don't like either version, even though it was endorsed by Harvard and Stanford. After using electronic medical records for over 2 decades, I realized that people who spend their time to create these online platforms, they don't practice medicine in real life because the options that they put up are just not practical. And they probably hire people in medicine who don't use platforms regularly or who don't actually practice medicine. So I take any new technology with a grain of salt. Here are some common time-restrictive eating schedules and how hard or how easy it is to do. 12-12 is rather easy to do. If you sleep 8 hours, you either don't eat 4 hours before you sleep or you wait 4 hours after you get up to eat. And then you have 12 hours of fasting. This pattern allows for 3 meals a day spaced out quite evenly. Of course, you can always just do 1 or 2 meals a day as well. Now 10-14 is a little bit more difficult to do. That means you have to figure out how to not eat about 6 hours before and after you sleep. It's still very doable. You can always split 6 hours in half, but you may be hungry until you get used to it. So this allows 10 hours to eat 3 meals a day if you wanted to eat that many meals. Most people don't need to eat 3 meals a day. 8-16 gets even more challenging, but it can be more beneficial in terms of activating the benefits of fasting like autophagy. It's good to split those extra 8 hours of not eating into 2 even windows before and after you get up. And it's always best not to eat late. Eating late reduces insulin sensitivity, making your body more likely to store food as fat to make you gain more weight and become insulin resistant. And at night, your insulin response will naturally decline, especially because you release melatonin, a natural hormone that makes you sleepy, as well as slightly insulin resistant. People who eat late can disrupt melatonin production, increase core body temperature, trigger digestive-related arousal problems like acid reflux and bloating, all of which can impair deep sleep and REM cycles, which are both critical for your brain and hormone balance. Now, keeping insulin levels low during fasting will help your body burn stored fat for energy during the night. And nighttime eating has been associated with higher markers of inflammation, especially when meals are high in carbs and fat. However, one meal a day is even harder to do. That means you only eat 1 hour and you fast for 23 hours. That means you have to figure out what to do for the majority of your waking hours. I actually do this when I get really busy with work and I'm so tired that not only do I not have any time to eat, but all I want to do is sleep. That's because I probably ran out of energy. And some of you have told me from my online YouTube poll that you only do this because you're so busy at work too. But others have told me that they would not do this at all because they're afraid to get hungry. And about half of you told me that you would do it because of the benefits of fasting and losing weight. But what I didn't ask is how many of you actually eat like this and actually eat your food within an hour. I think most people are probably eating for 2 to 4 hours and considering that as one meal a day. Sure, there are people who have successfully lost weight eating one meal a day if you eat less calories overall. So it's really not the timing of that meal, but it's the number of calories that help people lose weight. Because there are people who gain a lot of weight from eating one meal a day too. And remember, when you do lose weight, you will lose muscle mass. There is no way not to lose muscle mass when you lose weight unless you exercise. So if you're physically active, you actually have to eat enough calories and protein to meet your metabolic demands to keep up your muscle mass. And remember, your muscle is a backup energy depot of glycogen for when you aren't eating. But your muscle tissue can also be broken down to make glucose when you don't have enough calories. And you were made like this as a safety net so that your brain and organs survive. Hence, it's not a good idea to eat one meal a day if you are physically active. You will run out of energy and start breaking down muscle tissue. For most people, their palate is pretty consistent in terms of food preferences to eat. You will eat the similar proportions of carbohydrate, protein, and fat in your meals. And if you're physically active, you may not be able to eat enough calories, protein, and fiber in that one meal if you only eat one meal a day. Lots of people think one meal a day is a good idea to reduce calories. And ChatGPT agrees with you that you can lose weight. But does this happen in real life? For many people, no. While the logic of one meal a day assumes people will naturally eat less by limiting their eating window, research and real-world data shows that individuals actually overcompensate during that one meal, especially if that one meal is high in calories and in poor nutrient density. This is high in calories and poor nutrient density. And this is a typical American dinner. I too served this to my kids many times when I was busy. You can swap this bread for pizza dough or for macaroni. Or maybe you eat one of these other meals. This is like two food groups, some kind of dairy and starch or meat and starch to fill your protein, carb, and fat calories. These buckets are easily filled, and marketing has convinced generations that this is an acceptable and complete nutritious meal. Really? So why are people getting so sick and gaining so much weight? And you'll be surprised that some of that weight isn't fat, it's not muscle, and it's not bone. So what is it? Well, first, if you're over 30, you are losing bone mass. Every decade, you lose even more. And muscle, that's easier to build, but you also start losing muscle mass at 30. And with every decade that passes, you lose more muscle unless you do resistant exercises. And unlike bone, where you can't really see the results of your efforts, muscle, on the other hand, if you put in more work, you can see that your muscles are getting bigger. And you can do this work at any age, increase the size of your muscles. But if you weigh yourself every day and you are not exercising and you are gaining weight, then you're likely gaining either fat or water. Your body stores all excess calories from carbs, fat, and protein as fat. However, if you eat the wrong electrolytes, your body also stores the water. Either one may not be a good thing, right? So let's first talk about gaining fat. You can't store much sugar, so this bread eaten in excess, or your hamburger bun or pizza crust or noodles, will turn into fat after it saturates your glycogen stores and meets your energy needs. Your glycogen is only 4% of your body weight. Now, your hamburger patties, your chicken, hot dogs, sausages can't be stored as protein at all. You can use it to build tissue, but any excess protein will be converted to calories that are stored as fat. Hence, if your dinner exceeds your caloric needs, you will gain weight rapidly as fat. And unfortunately, exercise doesn't burn many calories. To burn 1,000 calories, you have to walk 10 miles. That's 20,000 steps on your pedometer, and that's not even worth a pound. Hi friends, I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now. The typical US dinner, which is not just one sandwich, is over 2,000 calories, which increases during holidays to 3,000 calories. And the average person eats almost 4,000 calories every day. To gain a pound, you need to excess of 3,500 calories. If your resting metabolic rate only burns 1,300 calories a day, then you have a calorie excess of over 2,000 calories. So if you're bad at math, let me put it simply. This is a great way to gain a pound every other day. However, if you eat your meals early and skip dinner, you would basically be eating 1,400 calories the rest of the day. This would put you at a calorie deficit if you skip that dinner part to help you lose weight and most closely match a sedentary metabolism. Now, of course, everybody's different. And in general, those who are younger, more active, have more muscle mass, have higher resting metabolism, and may need more calories to not lose too much weight too quickly. And remember, you don't want to lose muscle. A healthy weight loss goal is 1 pound per week. Have you ever felt like you're starving after a period of not eating? That's called rebound hunger, and it's well documented in people who starve. Fasting for 24 hours can lead to intense hunger, which may override satiety signals during the meal. And what happened when you got to food again? Did you find yourself wolfing down your food because you were so hungry? So when you eat after a fast, the speed at which you're eating is probably inhibiting your ability to chew. Chewing actually helps you control your appetite. The longer you chew, the less you eat and the fuller you feel. So when you are eating pretty fast, especially if your food quality is ultra processed and calorically dense, you will simply eat more food and more calories. Do you associate eating as a reward? If so, foods you enjoy can drive you to eat more food. After a prolonged fast, the brain is more sensitive to highly palatable foods full of fat, sugar, salt, soft, or crunchy. These are all addictive combos, and they make you more likely to binge and crave junk food. This changes your hormones, and when you are hungry, ghrelin, the hunger hormone, spikes sharply, and leptin, the satiety hormone, may not signal fullest fast enough, especially if someone eats quickly. And if you don't eat wet food with fiber, well, you're gonna be eating more calorically dense food. And let's be honest, if you're starving, you're not gonna be choosing that apple or a bowl of kale to eat. You're gonna go for highly palatable foods. How many times did you reward yourself with extra dessert because you went the whole day without eating? Now, last night I went to a Bible fellowship potluck, and one of my friends said she was starving because she was so busy the entire day and she didn't get to eat. So that was her one meal for the day. And of course, she got some dessert, and then she went back to get some more dessert. She felt like she deserved it because she was working so hard and she didn't have any food the whole day. And unfortunately, unless your work is a professional athlete, running, swimming for several hours a day, you are unlikely to work off the dinner and 2 sets of desserts even if that's just your one meal a day. Now, your meal quality can lower your calories without restricting to one meal a day if you eat low-calorie, high-fiber, nutrient-dense foods. I used to do that. On days I eat dessert, I would eat salad, but that doesn't mean I was getting my nutrient density. If you're eating the standard American diet, it won't be possible to get all your micronutrients and to reduce your calories. So we talked about the practicality of doing one meal a day. Now let's talk about some pretty interesting and unfortunately forgotten clinical research and observational world data. This will help you understand how eating one meal a day or any calorie-restricted diet affects the human body. Now, when it comes to lifespan, all animals in the animal kingdom, from flies to worms to your pet dog, they will live much longer if they are calorically restricted. This doesn't mean you starve them. In fact, if you caloric restrict your dog, Fido can live 2 to 3 years longer, which in dog years would be 14 to 21 years. And it's pretty sad now that even dogs look like their owners and are getting overweight and frankly obese. Now, we aren't starving our dog, but we have always fed our dog only one meal a day. And I make it a point to remind my kids not to overfeed the dog if you want it to live longer. You know, every time my kids were eating, they would feel sorry that the dog didn't get any food. But the dog needs to eat an OMAD diet, one meal a day, to increase the dog's longevity. So does one meal a day increase the longevity in people? That's hard to prove because you have to follow a group of people for the entire duration of their life and compare that to another group of people who aren't eating the OMAD diet. They need to be eating the exact same food. And that's pretty much impossible unless you lock people up. That would be unethical. However, there are lots of people who have calorically restricted both voluntarily and involuntarily in history. Look at the wars that are raging right now in Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East. People are starving all over the world. Historically, so many people starved in so many countries, even our country. They've had their calories unwillingly restricted due to the lack of food. Think about World War I and World War II and the Great Depression. Now, we may not have been alive during that time, but you can go talk to your great-grandparents and grandparents who were. Everyone knows that when you don't eat, you don't survive. Now, the good news is, for all of us watching YouTube, is that we aren't starving. Maybe overfed and undernourished, but not starving. And we can look back on data to see what happened to people, like children, who had calorie restriction diets. So if your mom starved when she was pregnant with you, you would actually be at higher risk of being obese and getting diabetes as an adult. Hence, it's really important that pregnant moms consult their own physicians before they make any dietary changes. And the same is true for children postnatal who starve. And data collected during the Dutch hunger during the winter of 1944 to 1945, for which people, for about 7 months, the German-occupied Netherlands saw that their food rations plummeted to as low as 400 to 800 calories per day. That severely affected the health of children and the elderly. They were the most vulnerable. Hence, it's important to talk to your pediatrician before you put your child on a diet. It's also important to check on your loved ones who are elderly to make sure that they are getting enough food to eat. This is also true for growing children. This is why intermittent fasting, which is not eating for over 24 hours, can be dangerous without medical supervision. Some people choose to do this more than once a week. And when you don't eat, you are essentially starving. Remember, your body automatically draws from your muscle and fat stores for those calories. But you don't have all those essential nutrients stored, like antioxidants such as vitamin C, carotenoids, and polyphenols. You have to get those from eating, and only certain foods have them, like whole fruits and vegetables. They are critical to support your metabolism, so you efficiently use your calories. They are also critical to protect your organs, like your brain. Turns out, there is one kind of dietary pattern that will allow you to calorically restrict as well as get your essential micronutrients. That this dietary pattern can help to extend your life by 12 years. And that dietary pattern to hit 12 years of longevity isn't restricting your dietary pattern to eating only one meal a day. But it does include eating a dietary pattern regularly of fruits, vegetables, and beans. All of these are nutrient-rich relatively lower caloric foods. And the thing with calorie restriction is that it is very dangerous for children, especially when they are in utero or when the mom is pregnant. So when you starve, there is a chance you can get malnourished. And malnourishment in children, starting from their development in utero as a fetus, can significantly decrease their educational level as an adult. Hence, it's important that we feed our kids. And we can't feed them micronutrient deficient foods. When we do so, we starve them of essential micronutrients. Our kids are our future leaders. The effects of starvation in adults has actually been worked out by Professor Ancel Keys, a physiologist who invented K-rations that fed and supported the U.S. military during World War II. He was also the one who infamously linked dietary cholesterol to cardiovascular disease. Have you heard of the 7-country study? He was one of the 17 researchers who participated in the 7-country studies that linked diet, lifestyle, and heart disease. And that study championed the Mediterranean diet for longevity. Despite what you've heard about Dr. Keys, his advocacy for the Mediterranean diet is still advocated by medical doctors around the world. In the 1940s, he recruited 36 young men who volunteered their bodies to science. The study was known as a Minnesota starvation study, and those men were calorie restricted to lose 25% of their body weight so that science could learn how the body behaves when it's starving. And remember, in the old days, most of the world was starving. Participants went from a diet of 3,200 calories to a diet of 1,800 calories a day, divided into 2 meals, breakfast and lunch. Now that was a semi-starvation phase, which doesn't sound like they were starving at all until you hear about their workout. Another period was a refeeding period of a caloric restriction to 2,000 to 3,200 calories. And the last refeeding period was an unlimited amount of calories that they could eat. So what did they have these men do? Well, the study participants were required to work 15 hours a week in the lab and walk 22 miles in a week and participate in a variety of other activities for 25 hours a week. They weren't just sitting and laying down. They were severely calorie restricted in 2 phases of the study. And guess what happened? During the semi-starvation phase, these men had dramatic changes to their mind and their body. They began to look gaunt. They had decreased strength and stamina. Their body temperature actually lowered, as well as their heart rate. They were hungry. And the hunger made them obsessed about food, dreaming, fantasizing, and reading all about food. They lost all interest in women. They were allowed to chew gum. One participant chewed 40 packets in one day. They had mental health challenges, and they became more fatigued, irritable, depressed, and apathetic. They also couldn't think well, even though when they tested them on exams, it didn't show any difference in their performance. 19 of those 36 original participants actually made it to their 80s, which is pretty good considering that the average US life expectancy in the mid-70s now, despite a caloric abundance, right? And when they were interviewed in their 80s, they all said that they would starve again for humanity if they were 25. Now, this study on the surface looks pretty cruel, but it did provide a lot of data for science and medicine. It definitively proved that diet alone could have profound effects on blood pressure, cholesterol, resting heart rate, and your mental health. And when you calorically restrict people, all they want to do is think about food. And yet, how many decades did we try to peddle a low-calorie diet or counting calories as a way to lose weight? I believe there are 2 published books based on the data for the Minnesota starvation studies. And yet, we are all trying to get people to reduce their calories by limiting their food. It doesn't work because the mind wants to eat. It's very powerful when you're hungry. But people still try, and hence no wonder everyone is overeating and gaining weight. How many people can successfully reduce their food volume to reduce their calories? Not many. But when you reduce food volume, you're also restricting critical micronutrients. Hence, eating less can't be the only equation for us to get healthy. We need to change the quality of our food. It doesn't work if we're eating less of the same foods. And we're just going to go hungry unless you're on Ozempic or Wegovy, some GLP-1 agonists. And that's why one meal a day, it's hard to pull off. It leaves people very hungry. And when you're hungry, all you want to do is think about food. That's why it's dangerous to shop when you're hungry. And when you get food, you're just gonna overeat. And when it comes to longevity, nutrient density matters. Eating one bag of potato chips is better than eating 3 bags of potato chips, but none of the potato chips is gonna add to longevity micronutrients that your body needs. However, if you upgrade your food quality, your nutrient density, and eliminate processed foods, and add fruits and vegetables and legumes, and avoid smoking, as well as alcohol, start moving and get yourself to a normal weight, you can achieve longevity, potentially 12 years longer. My mother-in-law eats a ton of fruits and vegetables as a bulk of her main meals. Everyone knows she loves fruit, so they bring like giant grocery bags of guava, dragon fruit, oranges, and apples and bananas. She has skipped dinner for over 30 years of her life. She's 94 and independent. And no, she does not eat one meal a day. Now, remember how I mentioned that the other way to gain weight is to retain water? Have you ever gotten on a scale later in the day and noticed that that balance went up by a lot and you didn't even eat yet? That's probably water weight. Water is heavy, folks. Have you ever tried to lug a paint bucket full of water? Normally, if you drink the water, your body will naturally balance out fluid as well as electrolytes and help you either urinate it or defecate it out. If you're exercising, you're breathing heavily and you actually lose water when you breathe. And if you're sweating, you're losing even more water. But some people abnormally retain more water than they should. And those people usually have some kidney, liver, or heart problems. However, many healthy people without any organ problems are also retaining water. That's because their food is changing their body's physiology by overeating a single electrolyte, sodium. So many people are liberal on their salt because they think you need salt. Sure, your body needs calories, and we all know what happens when you're liberal on the sugar for calories, right? But somehow they think that salt is an exception, that it doesn't have health consequences. It absolutely does. When you load up on sodium, whether it's from your energy drink, your meals, your snacks, the problem is when you eat more than your body needs, it will retain that salt, and along the sodium will come the water. It sounds like a good thing, but it actually isn't, because it makes your body unbalanced. Have you ever noticed yourself waking up swollen, maybe with stiff joints? Your body will dilute the added sodium to keep the sodium concentration in your blood constant. That means it will retain water. And at any given time, your sodium concentration has to be within a narrow window. Otherwise, your cells can shrink or swell up. Either would be detrimental for organ parts like your brain. In some people, swelling in the brain can cause the brain to herniate, which is not compatible with life. Now, that usually doesn't happen with normal people just eating salt, but it can happen when you're given the wrong IV saline infusion. More commonly, the brain shrinks. Dehydration is so prevalent, and dehydration is not compatible with life either. Excess sodium actually contributes to dehydration, and you won't be able to drink enough water to match your sodium intake. Your thirst is just not good enough to gauge. And even if you do, your body will still retain that water rather than pee it out to keep the sodium diluted, especially if the kidneys are under strain or if chronic high sodium intake has altered the hormonal balance like your aldosterone and vasopressin levels. Now, new research shows that excess sodium doesn't just circulate in the blood or get excreted. It actually can become osmotically inactive by being stored in your skin, your muscle, and connective tissue, particularly bound to molecules like glycosaminoglycans. This stored sodium doesn't immediately raise your blood sodium levels, so it flies under the radar, but it can still attract water and affect inflammation and immune function. And this creates a false sense of a sodium balance when the body is actually in a sodium unbalance and under stress. Now, ironically, despite water retention, people can become functionally dehydrated. Cells may lose water due to the higher extracellular concentration of sodium. It's like soaking your vegetables in salt water. The vegetables shrink. That's what happens to your cell. Your cells are the vegetables. The body also holds onto water in the wrong compartments, like interstitial tissue instead of inside cells or circulating blood. Hence, you feel bloated and more swollen. And when you retain water to dilute your salt, you can also increase your blood volume. This leads to an increase in blood pressure, which can be especially dangerous if you're lying down, as your blood pressure naturally should be going lower when you sleep. At night, your body has a nocturnal dip, a natural lowering of blood pressure to rest the cardiovascular system. But a high sodium dinner can blunt or eliminate this dip. And people who lose this dip, they're called non-dippers. Non-dippers have a higher risk of stroke, heart attacks, and organ damage. And if you survive it, then of course this leads to heart disease, dementia, and kidney failure. Really, no organ is spared. And you'll want to listen to this. In the early morning hours between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m., your body experiences a morning surge. This is when your blood pressure and your heart rate and your platelet stickiness all go up due to a natural hormone that you release called cortisol. This increases your risk of having high blood pressure and blood clots. And for those of us who have normal blood vessels and normal blood pressure and normal platelets, this isn't a problem. However, when this surge occurs on top of chronically high blood pressure and stickiness in the platelets and abnormal blood vessels, and then you add sodium for your evening meal, well, this skyrockets your risk. The heart works harder, the blood pressure number goes higher, it spikes, your arteries become stiffer and more narrow. This all works the heart even harder. And on top of that, your blood is more likely to clot. This increases your risk of clotting in small arteries like the ones that feed your heart, your coronary arteries. Clots stop blood flow and injures tissue. This is why heart attacks and strokes are most common in the early morning. And hence it's important to regulate the sodium-potassium ratio in your diet to help regulate your blood pressure. If you want to learn more about how to do that, watch the next video.